Instructional Practices Inventory, Data for Improving Instruction, Achievement, and School Culture. I wanted to give you some more information about the Instructional Practices Inventory that you may see taking place in your building over the next few weeks. You may see BLTM members conducting this inventory and then collaborating with your fellow teammates about the instructional practices and the data that was collected. The Instructional Practices Inventory is a process of faculty-led strategies for collecting valid and reliable student engagement data and for collaboratively studying the data with the goal of increasing and enriching learning experiences throughout the school. This process is largely faculty-led, yet in some buildings some administrators do participate. But it is a way of collecting student engagement data with the real power being in the collaborative study that will take place between colleagues as they look at this data with the goal of increasing and enriching the learning experiences for all students within their building. The IPI is a very practical system for understanding learning across the entire school. It provides one form of data that is very valuable when a school faculty is having crucial conversations about student learning and instructional strategies. The focus is on student learning rather than teaching. The IPI process collects data about student engagement. Teachers have to study and think collaboratively. The IPI profiles are created to be the basis for collaborative faculty study and reflection. IPI data can help maintain faculty focus on continuous change in school-wide learning and related instruction. The IPI also provides extensive formative data so teachers can frequently monitor and adjust their practices. The IPI does not profile the instructional activities in which students are engaged. It profiles how students are engaged in learning during the instructional activities. For example, a student may be doing a worksheet, which might at first glance appear to not be that engaging. But if the questions on the worksheet are higher order thinking or higher level DOK, then that would be a more engaging activity for the students. So the students, the profile is really about how the students are engaging in the learning during certain instructional activities. There are approximately 100 to 150 schools in Iowa that use the IPI process, including college community schools right here in Cedar Rapids. The IPI categories are just a system of codes. It's not saying necessarily that one code or one category is better than the other category. It's just a system of coding things. And so if you have a IPI sheet handy, which is also contained on the professional learning site, you will see that there are 5 categories of codes when doing an instructional practices inventory. For instance, number 6 is student active engaged learning. Students are doing authentic hands-on problem-based projects, problem-based work, research. Things are higher order learning. Examples of things associated with this include inquiry-based approaches, such as project-based and problem-based learning, research and discovery, or exploratory learning, authentic demonstrations, doing independent metacognition, reflective journaling, student self-assessment, higher order responses to higher order questions would all be contained in Category 6. Category 5 is where we have student verbal learning conversations, academic dialogue. There are many higher order thinking questions involved in the student verbal learning conversations. Things you might see include collaborative or cooperative learning, peer tutoring, debate and questioning, partner research, discovery and exploratory learning, small group and whole class analysis and problem solving, metacognition, reflective journaling, and self-assessment. Conversations in this category may be teacher stimulated, but they are not teacher dominated. And this is very much higher order, deeper thinking driven by peer verbal interaction in Category 5. In Category 4, we have teacher-led instruction. Students here are very attentive to teacher-led instruction as the teacher leads the learning experience by disseminating the appropriate information. Typically, students are listening to the teacher share, explain, or give directions. Things associated with this include teacher-dominated question and answer, teacher lecture or verbal explanations, teacher direction giving, teacher demonstration. There may be discussions that occur, but the discussion questions and ideas primarily come from the teacher. There is very little evidence of student higher order or deeper learning in Category 4. In Category 3, this is student work with teacher involved. So students are engaged in independent or group work designed to build basic understanding, to gain new knowledge or pertinent skills. Examples of classroom practices here would be things like basic fact-finding and skill building, understanding through practice, a lot of seat work and worksheets, chapter review questions, multimedia with the teacher viewing the media along with the students. The teacher is attentive to and engaged with and supportive of the students. Students' higher order and deeper learning, though, is not evident in Category 3. In Category 2, students are working, but the teacher is uninvolved. Okay. So it's very similar to Category 3, except now the teacher is not engaged. The teacher may be out of the room, working at their computer, grading papers, or in some form engaged in work that is not directly associated with teacher learning. Student higher order and deeper learning is definitely not evident. And in Category 1 is student disengagement, where students are not engaged in any learning directly related to the curriculum. So if we break this down into a more pie chart form, what you'll see is in the research, highly effective schools spend certain percents of times in all of these categories. Again, it's not necessarily saying that a code 3 is worse than a code 5. It's just saying in highly effective schools, we're going to see more of things like 4, 5, and 6 rather than in 2 and 3, or even 3 and 4. So this pie chart is saying the percentages of each category that highly effective schools show to be involved with. So if you look at, for instance, code 6, where we should be spending 25% of our time, and code 5, where we should be spending 5 to 10% of our time. Code 4, where a classroom should be 35 to 45% of the time, and a code 3, where we should be spending 15 to 25% of our time, a code 2, 5 to 10%, and a code 1, less than 3% of the time. So if we look at the statistics, categories 3 and 4 commonly represent 60 to 70% or more of classroom time. And categories 3 and 4 typically can be described as replete with passive learning experiences. Higher achieving schools will spend more time in categories 4, 5, and 6 than lower achieving schools that spend more time in categories 1, 2, and 3. There's an extreme caution about being in categories 3 and 4 at the sake of categories 5 and 6, because those tend to be combined together, categories 3 and 4, very much passive learning experiences without a lot of higher order thinking or student-to-student conversation. The highest achieving schools will show a total of categories 4 and 5 and 6 combined together equaling 75% or more. So with this, your school or even your department or your team, your PLC, could set a goal. For instance, this school shared their goal with me, a school, of 40% of our observations using the IPI will be in category 5 and 6 combined. So a goal could be set like this. Then, as a team, as a PLC, as a department, what do we need in order to be able to get into that categories to reach our goal? What do we need to do instructionally so that our students are at those levels? So just some real brief protocols for data collection. Data observations take place on very typical school days. where those who are observing systematically move from class to class based on the floor plan, so classrooms are getting observed multiple times throughout the day. The focus is truly on the students and what they are doing and not the teacher. Those who are doing the inventory code the student learning during the very first moments of their observation. So when they walk in, it is what are the students doing at that time, and what are the majority of students doing at that time. When an observation is borderline between two codes, you always select the higher code. We code during learning time, not transitions between different activities. So if an observer walks in and there's a transition taking place, the observer would wait and code exactly what is observed after the transition. Special education and student-teacher classrooms are coded. Classrooms of substitute teachers are coded only if they are included in the higher categories of 4, 5, and 6. All observations are done anonymously, and no observations take place during the first or the last 5 minutes of class. When a building gets their data, they break it down, as you'll see here, by category, so the 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then we also lump some of the categories together, like 5 and 6, 2 and 3, and then 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, and 3. And remember back to what I just shared about the research showing that categories 4, 5, and 6, highly effective schools will spend 75% or more of their time in those 3 categories. And then you can also break it down into the pie charts as well, based upon your core and non-core data and total data. So when the IPI is conducted, it is separated by core versus non-core, and then a total picture for the whole school as well. Then in your PLC groups, you would then reflect on that. First, looking at what you can celebrate. What are some issues or concerns you want to talk about or study more? What would be good examples of categories 5 and 6? What instructional strategies could we commit to trying in the near future to help us move towards categories 5 and 6? If it's the second or third time that you've collected the data, how did the new data compare with the prior data? What should be our IPI goals for the next year? For the building, for our PLC, what should we set our goals on? What professional learning do we need to be able to increase categories 4, 5, and 6? Why is the data valuable to us? And how can we lower categories 1 and 2? And this becomes the power of the collaboration around the IPI data and how that can improve student learning within your building. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to contact myself, Melissa Hawking, or any BLT member. Thank you.